Welcome everyone to Spend Less, Travel More, or Get Savvy webinar series topic that we will be covering today. Just to let you all know again that we are recording this session. It is so great to have you on. My name is Kamaya Wallace-Bashard. I am a Assistant Director for Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Access with University of Illinois Extension. I also served formerly as a consumer economics educator with Extension, and I'm going to hand it over to my co-presenter, Nikki, today to introduce herself.
Hi, I am Nikki Giancola Shanks, and I am the Director of External Affairs and Student Loan Policy at IDFPR, which is the Illinois Department of Financial and Professional Regulation.
Thank you, Nikki. I also want to recognize our other two colleagues, Kathy Sweetler and Andrea Pellegrini, for all their help with the content development for this webinar. To get started, we would like to start with our land acknowledgement statement. So collectively, the Get Savvy team represents organizations across the state of Illinois, which rests on land of multiple Native nations. We would like to begin today by recognizing and acknowledging that the organizers of Get Savvy, Grow Your Green Stuff webinar primarily resides in Illinois and serve the state of Illinois, which include ancestral lands of the Peoria, the Kaskaskia, Piankashaw, Wea, Miami, Mascoutin, Ottawa, Sauk, Massaquoi, Kickapoo, Potawatomi, Ojibwe, and Chickasaw nations. Thank you very much. If you would like to learn more about why we do our land acknowledgement, University of Illinois has the Office of the Chancellor that provides information on this as well. So we have a few engagement pieces for you that we would love for your participation, whether in the chat or the polls that we do have coming up. We always like to start off by just asking, where are you logging in from today? So which state, county, or even out of the country? Sometimes we do get that. I see California, I see Champaign, Chicago, Louisiana, welcome. Clinton, at South Dakota. Great, thank you for including those. I see Moline. All right, wonderful. Thank you. So today's topic is so important for us as educators. For us, we love to travel. We love to talk about the topic of travel, and knowing that we have learned lots of different life lessons on our different adventures. So we wanted to share some really cool pictures of places that we've been, just so for you to see the fact that this is a topic that we really love. And I know as we get into the holiday season, some people might be staying put, but some of us might be going on different adventures. So wanted to share that with you. Our goals for today are to focus on how we plan our trip to include a budget. So when we're thinking about what our next adventure is going to be, how do we do that in planning and making sure that we do have a budget to help us enjoy our trip. We're also going to be looking at comparing costs for different travel modes, and then we'll discuss some tools to help protect your finances. We'll also explore methods for funding your plans, right? So lots of different ways that you can look to see how you would pay for that trip that you really want to go on. Then we'll also talk about, what to watch for as you're thinking about your trip, as you're on vacation. So things include costs and looking at scams and fraud as well. Now, like I said, we would love your engagement. So one of my first questions for you is, where is your next dream vacation destination? Ooh, Brazil is Paris, beautiful. Japan, Italy, Hawaii, somewhere in South America, Portugal, Ireland, Iceland. Oh my goodness, cruise to the Caribbean. Lots of great places in here. Oh, wonderful. I see Alaska on here. I see Greece as well. Thank you. You are also adventurous and have all these places that you'd like to go. Oh, wonderful. I see Turkey popping up there as well, too. I have another engagement piece for you. So Kathy just launched this poll for us. We like to talk about the different ways how we travel. So what is your favorite way to travel? Is it by boat? Do you prefer to just take the bus? Do you like to be in your own car, train, or anything else? Any other ways that you might like to travel? All right. Thank you. I'll give it a couple more seconds before I end and share the poll. All right, I'm seeing. All right, I'll go ahead and end the poll and I'll share that with you. So a lot of people, so 50% prefer flying by airplane, but we see car coming in there as well too. So different modes in how we like to travel, depending on where our destination is, like what are the things that we're taking with us, our comfort level, who is traveling with us, a lot of factors that might influence, the way that we do travel. So with that, I'm going to have Nikki talk with you for a while. Nikki, I'll hand it over to you.
Thanks, Kamaya. So our next phase, right? We talked about where we would love to go, but now how do we actually create a spending plan or our vacation budget for that dream vacation? Kamaya, next slide. Thanks. So there are a few different reasons for a spending plan. So a spending plan can help in a lot of different ways. So first, it could obviously help us estimate the cost of a trip. And we could then kind of make the decision, can I actually afford this trip or not? Or how long do I need to save for this trip given this estimate? And you could also adjust maybe what you thought your original plan was, right? You may be able to instead say, all right, well, for me, I wanted to go to Greece, but that may be further out of my budget right now. So maybe instead we'll go a little bit closer to home, right? So it allows you to kind of make those decisions. And then also it could help us stay on track when you're actually on your trip, to make sure that you don't get there and you start spending way more than you meant to. All right, so let's go ahead and we're going to kind of take a look at what the spending plan involves. So for each of these categories, what specific items do you think you'll need to account for in your spending plan or budget? So if we look at transportation, right, you're going to have to think about your to and from home and back again. Whether that's car or plane, like if you're taking a plane, how do you get to the airport? During the trip, are you staying in one spot? Are you traveling around? How are you going to do that? Fuel costs obviously play into this. So does if you're driving, parking, and tolls. Okay. Then when you think of accommodations, obviously during, where are you going to sleep during? Or is it multiple different places? But also sometimes when you're getting to your destination or traveling back from your destination, sometimes you need an additional lodging. So for example, my cousin went to the Galapagos Islands and she couldn't just fly straight there, right? She had to plan out and spend a night somewhere else before she flew there. And then you're also going to want to think when it comes to accommodations, any additional fees. If you're driving, do you need to park your car and is there a fee for that? If you're staying at a resort, are there resort fees, etc.? Then food, obviously while you're traveling, how are you eating? What's your budget like? That includes during your trip, but also traveling to and back from your destination. That may be grabbing a sandwich at the airport or, going through a drive-through on your way, but think of it also not just when you get there, but how you're getting there. That includes groceries, if you're going to shop at all, snacks that you may need, and beverages as well. Then you're going to want to think of pre-trip costs. So what do we mean by that? That's anything that you may need to pay for in order to go on this trip. So if you have a pet and you need to board your pet, if you want a house sitter or somebody to at least check on your house, Maybe you're traveling somewhere and you're like, I need some new clothes. I don't have a swimsuit that fits currently, whatever it might be. All of that you should include when you're thinking about your vacation. And then last, the entertainment. This is, what are you doing on vacation? So are you buying tickets to special events, a play, a museum, whatever it might be? Tourist sites, some are free, some are not free. And are there any type of professional photos that you would like? So you can obviously make your own spending plan, or you could use ours that we will share. I believe it's in the chat. Can you go back one more? Thanks, sorry. All right, so transportation is obviously a really big expense while traveling. So it's helpful to think of it in steps. Transportation to and from your destination and cost at your destination. It's very easy when you're thinking about this, about if you're doing ride shares at all, you're going to want to factor that cost in, and parking costs when visiting big cities. So earlier we did, sorry, can you go back? Earlier we did ask about your preferred mode of transportation. And along with that, we encourage you to consider how flexible can you be with the days you travel. So sometimes if you're booking flights on particular days can be significantly cheaper than another day. So you're going to want to take time to explore different options. Yeah, so other things to kind of consider is the time of year you're traveling when it comes to travel costs, day of the week you leave, and actually also the time of year you're searching for your transportation cost. Okay, go ahead, Kaya. All right, so this kind of is a little chart that we've created that we're going to put in the chat for you, that you can kind of compare different costs for your trip and see which one actually is most cost efficient. Sometimes people think, is it actually cheaper to drive to O'Hare and park your car there for a week rather than just fly out of a different airport that may be closer? But you have to think of all of those types of things. So this is a handy little chart we came up with. If you are driving, this is the tool at the US Department of Energy, and you could actually calculate the fuel cost of a trip, not only just in general, but also based on the type of car you'll be driving. So in this example, it's actually going from Champaign, Illinois to Boston, and you could see it, the cost difference between driving a Honda Odyssey or a Ford Escape Hybrid. So this could also be helpful whether you're driving your own car or if you're looking to rent a car, so you know what type of car you may want to rent. All right, so then lodging expenses. Obviously, lodging, depending on what you like, can definitely range in cost. You may be a camper and want to just pop up a tent, and that's very low to $0. Or maybe you like to travel with a little bit of luxury. All right. So you have to figure out what's important to you and your companions in your lodging when you travel. Some people, for example, want their own bathroom. Other people are fine to share a bathroom at a hostel or a bed and breakfast. You're also going to want to look at any types of hidden fees that are with lodging. So this can include anything from resort fees. Sometimes if you're there for a longer time period, there may be an additional cleaning fee, depending what type of lodging you decide. But you're going to want to calculate the cost of lodging times the number of nights you'll be on the trip to give you an idea. Have a pet. So we are big dog lovers, me and Andrea. This is Andrea's dog, Unity. And Uni goes on all of Andrea's trips, and my dog Leia goes on many of ours too. So just think that if you are bringing a pet with you, that you may want to consider the cost, or you have a pet at all, like if there's a travel fee or a lodging fee, if you bring your pet with you, how much is it to board or have a house sitter and a dog walker? So yeah, just another thing to think of in terms of expenses. So one thing we wanted to kind of highlight is we are in this period of inflation, and airfare costs have been extremely high. And they are projected to stay high. I know sometimes people think, oh, if I just wait a little bit, maybe the price will come down. Currently, that does not seem to be the case. The demand for travel is very high, which I'm sure has something to do with the fact that a lot of people couldn't travel for a long time because of COVID. Obviously, fuel is costing more, which then gets passed down in airfare cost. There's a lot more flexibility in people's day-to-day. So because there's a lot of more people working from home or hybrid or whatever, they can maybe take a longer weekend more often. There's still a lot of issues with staffing, and that short staffing also means that there are less flights. So then the demand goes up. And there's decreased aircraft production as well, you know, everything with the supply chain. So it's definitely projected to continue to stay high. So this is an example for a travel goal with just an estimate with 2 travelers. So you could see categories of expenses that we talked about: transportation, lodging, food, entertainment, and about the amount we anticipate to spend. So the total here, you could see it. So the total would be about $4,800 for us to go on this 10-night trip. And we had to prepay about $1,200 for lodging. So then what's the date? The saving goal, this is again to travel to Massachusetts. And this is how much we need, about $3,500. And the target date is September 2023. So then you would take this total needed and figure out how much you need to save per month. Another thing to keep in mind is that a lot of times things add up. So this is actually for one person here. Like, just think about it. If you're grabbing a beverage in a restaurant, like a coffee to go, that's $3. If you're doing that 3 times a day, coffee, pop, whatever, that's $90 on a 10-day trip. So just don't forget when you're creating a spending plan to include those little amounts. So when you're on a trip, I know the last thing people probably want to do is take time to track your spending, but it is very helpful. So you're going to want to kind of explore which works for you before you're actually on the trip. So maybe, for example, an envelope, you actually put how much you are willing to spend a day in an envelope, and then that is how much money you have for that day. You may need to, maybe you want to track everything in an app or on a spreadsheet. That is something you could do electronically. Some people still like to write it down, whether that be in a calendar on this particular day that you're planning to spend that money, or in a notebook. So whichever you prefer, but if you track as you are traveling, particularly on very big trips, it will help you stay in budget. All right. I'm going
Thank
to
you,
turn
Nikki.
back over to Kamaya.
Great. Well, thanks, Nikki, for walking us through, some techniques that we can use to create like our travel budget. Now I'm going to talk about the money piece. So what are some methods that you can use as you're trying to plan your trip? Things that's going to be workable for you, that's going to make sense for you, that when you get back, if it's things you need to pay down or pay off, just trying to see what strategies will work well for you. I am the person with the polls, folks. So I have another one for you, because we like to hear from you all. So how do you usually fund your vacation? Do you usually use repay methods where you just get that done? Is it credit cards? Do you usually get some money from family and friends? How about using points that you have? So whether it is you have like airline points or credit card points, I see it coming through. I like this. There's like just differences in how people think about and how people actually fund their vacations. All right, I'll give it another second and then I'm going to end and share the poll. So it looks like a lot of people are wanting to making sure that they have that savings in order to pay for that vacation. Then coming in, I see credit cards as well. I see using points and prepaid options. Thank you for sharing that with us. So lots of different ways in how people do decide to pay for their trip. Well, why I asked that question is, I think it's very good to compare options, right? To see how much will I pay in interest if I go this route, or if I'm paying it, say strictly from savings, like most of you said, knowing that you won't have any interest payment. But sometimes, depending on your situation, depend on the type of trip you're going on, that might vary. So we wanted to do like a just compare an option piece here for you. So when it says cash on here, having like that savings, this also means that you'll have that money ready to pay off like your cards immediately after you get back. But looking at this example, if we take it column by column, here we have 4 categories. We have transportation, lodging, food, and entertainment. So say for a lot of us who want to have that money saved, we want to have that $4,800 saved, and we have it in our accounts to be able to cover the cost of our trip. But for lots of times in different situations, we might think of doing maybe personal loans or doing like a credit card. But just understanding that when we do use like a credit card, when we do take out like a personal loan, you will be paying interest on that. The difference between savings, credit cards, and personal loans, as you can see here with the numbers that we have worked up, and we have some rounding up here as well too, just to let you know that when we look at like these 3 options, like the difference between these are kind of small, right? It's not drastic difference that we're seeing, but it is important that when we do use options like credit card, that it is easy for that balance to keep adding up, or for us to maybe add things to like our credit card. And with personal loans, the cost is lower than credit card, but you may not get certain benefits that you may get with the credit card, right? So some of you already answered that you might get like points with the credit card. There are also other benefits that you might get to with the credit card, including like some exchange rates that you may have that might come out to be a little bit lower when you are paying for things through your credit card. But wanted to provide like these options to think about, what are the ways that I've paid for my trip? So for your next upcoming trip, pull out your comparison sheet and see what would be like the best route for you. So even though some people really just want to have all savings to pay off like their vacation, to pay off their trip, it may also be easy to do a combination of options. So whether that it is using, points for flights, maybe it's borrowing from family and friends. And I see some people rolling their eyes like, I would not do that. But people have different life situations where they might be able to do that. Some other options include maybe saving for food and souvenirs. So some things that you might pay, out of pocket for right away instead of putting it on your card. But whatever option that you might choose, or a combination of option that you might choose, think about your plan as to how you might repay the amount that you have, or the balance that you do have after you get back from your trip. Now, we wanted to highlight an important discussion point here in terms of taking vacation is such a wonderful thing for all of us, but knowing that for employees who do not have paid time off, they might be paying like additional costs for taking like that vacation. So in this example here that we do have, we're looking at an example where we have an employee who do have paid time off, and we have another employee that do not have paid time off. So if, for example, so using this example, if one employee's take-home pay is at $15 an hour and they're working like a 40-hour week, say, for example, they have $600. So if you go on vacation that costs, say, $1,500, and we're kind of guesstimating that, it's going to be like a 5 to 7 day vacation here. So the net cost per vacation is different for the person who has like that paid time off and the person who doesn't have paid time off. And in this chart, it is showing that the person who does have paid time off will end up paying a little bit less than that person who does not have like that paid time off. So just knowing that even with like working out like a vacation budget, maybe it's way overdue for a vacation, but for depending on like that employee situation, they might want to consider how they might fund that vacation and when they choose to take that vacation. Because how it might affect one person might be different than the way how it affects another person. So we wanted to share that example with you. So this chart that is shown here, and Nikki kind of alluded earlier to the increased cost for like flights, but in this example, we wanted to highlight that inflation can increase the cost of travel. And it can vary by time, and it can also vary by country. So we know that inflation doesn't look the same in every country, and you might not be affected by it the same way as everybody else. So this graph was pulled from a recent NerdWallet article. The data is from March 2020 to October of 2022. And what this is showing is that almost all travel prices have still stayed kind of high over like the last couple of years. And even with, some of the changes that we might see with pre-pandemic, we know that pre-pandemic, it was a little bit cheaper to fly. It was a little bit cheaper to travel than it is right now. So when we look at some specific things on here, and you're looking at like this blue line, which says car rentals, and like, what is happening? But we can think of examples of what was going on in our economy, what could cause that. But to look at things like flights, so airfare stayed low, but it kind of hit a record high in March of 2022. Car rental prices, they went really high in summer of 2021. So when we look at this to see how prices might change over time, depending on what's going on in our economy, and understanding that, challenges such as inflation might affect how much you're paying for the things that you use to pay for and the things that you need for your vacation, right? So we need our food, we need a place to stay, and of course with flights and other travel things that you might be need for your trip, just keeping in mind that the prices might change over time. Another thing that I want to highlight on here in terms of, traveling overseas, just knowing that, what's our dollar worth? Right? So we have a dollar in the US and we know what that dollar is worth. But when we look at things like our currency exchange over time, and when we look at what like a value of our US dollar is compared to euro, you see that it is cents less. So you can of course Google this information, and you can look at just the historical differences to see what your dollar has worth over time. But when you're traveling and when you're thinking about, what your exchange rates are going to be, just making sure that you are looking at what that dollar values and what you might be able to afford on your trip, and maybe ways that you might cut some different things out of what you had initially included for your trip. Now, with currency exchange, just highlighting the fact that it's so important to keep in mind that, of course, with like the different currencies, there are going to be fees as well. So thinking of, understanding what that fee structure is and how it might relate to like your credit card. Sometimes it's important to Not sometimes. For me, it's always important when I check when I'm traveling overseas to either check with my bank or credit card company to see what some of those fees are, because we don't always look at them because sometimes they're in the fine print, but just making sure that you understand what that fee structure is going to be. So if you use your card overseas, how much are you going to be paying each time you use that card? So yes, ask in your financial institution overseas as well too with using like ATM withdrawals here in the US. If you use like an ATM that's outside of like your bank network, you might have a fee, yes, but for some of the international withdrawals, those might be much higher. Another thing to consider is that the exchange rate. So if you're looking to get local currency, you have your US dollars and you're trying to get your local currency, while you're at that airport, just knowing that those fees are sometimes a little bit more expensive. But it is also important to consider ahead of time where you would get that money change so that you are using legitimate services and you're not you do not get targeted, because there are lots of different options when you travel overseas to get like your money exchange, but just making sure that you're doing a little bit of background before you go, so you do know where you want to get that information. So now, as we're talking about like methods for funding, right? So we talked about some examples and gave you some data as well. But as you're thinking about funding your trip, think about when you go on vacation. What are some of the things that you do that you're in vacation mode and you're not really thinking about, what the impact is going to be? But one of the options that we like to consider, one of the techniques that we think is great for considering how you might fund your trip, is considering the step down method. So when we go on vacation, thinking about the amount of meals that we eat per day as an example, so using food as an example, if you're eating out in a restaurant 3 times a day, think about how often you are doing that, what meals you're having, the type of restaurants that you're going to, how much you're paying for those meals. Because sometimes you can have like a bigger lunch, and lunch sometimes are a little bit cheaper, and then you might have something smaller or lighter in the evening. So step down method just helps us think about how much we're eating out. So deciding whether or not you can go to a grocery store that's close to you to find, some of your favorite snacks or new snacks for the places that you're visiting. So decide on whether you want to step that down. It doesn't mean completely not going to like the restaurant for a whole day, but maybe just doing like a restaurant meal and then doing groceries and then maybe doing shared meals as well. Step down method can be applied to a lot of different things. So food, this is just one example. Another example is entertainment. You're on vacation, there's lots of things you want to see. Maybe there are plays, little excursions that you want to go to. But think about what events you have planned and the costs of that event. So say, for example, you wanted to do 2 events within one day, maybe stepping that down, seeing how much the tickets cost, what admissions look like for you. See if there are some free options that you might be able to combine with like a paid option if you wanted to do multiple things that day. But the step down methods is just a way to think about not giving up the things that you really want to do on vacation, but just making sure that you're doing it in such a way where it doesn't feel like you're spending a lot on a lot of different events or a lot of different food. Now, just to pause for a moment, I want to ask this question. So, what apps do you use to save money while you're traveling? So, whether while you're traveling or while you're planning to travel, this could also be what tools do you use, right? So, I know some people do use like apps, but other tools that you might use. So, I see Yelp, I see Expedia. Thank you for sharing those. What else do we use? Southwest credit card. So yes, a credit card specifically for that. Booking, yes. So we are online. Gas Buddy, Priceline. We're going online and we're looking to see what resources there are. Kayak, yes, I've used these as well. Thank you for sharing that. Now, when we think about ways that we can try to save on our trip, and there are lots of different apps, and we try not to provide recommendations because we want people to do a little bit of background to find out more about what their needs are and decide which apps that they would like to use. But for apps, why we talk about this is that there are some that do have like different features that can help you save money. There are some apps that do help with like converting to like local currency. So understanding like what your dollar is actually going to be worth. If you're traveling with other people, there are some apps that do help you to split and track like the expenses. So, you're eating out, you're going on your new trail that you want to go on, you're going to the museum, lots of different things, some things that might have small fees, some things that might have bigger fees. It helps you with tracking that. And if, say, for example, you go out with others and you paid for the whole bill, you can use some apps, of course, to actually split those expenses, and then people reimburse you for that. There are apps, of course, that helps with like checking fuel prices for gas stations nearby. So even if it's like a 10 cents difference, that's a nice savings on your gas, of course. There are other ones that helps with like comparing flights, whether or not, what are your options for rideshare, and looking to see what are some of the ways that you can stay that is going to work well for the budget that you have created for your trip. All right, I see them some coming in still. Thank you for sharing those. I appreciate that. And with that, I am going to pause here and turn it back to Nikki.
All right, so this next section is kind of talking about everything Kamaya and I have outlined regarding finances and how do you protect that? So travel insurance, there are many different kinds. There are a range of prices. And in essence, though, what travel insurance does is it reimburses you, or it could offer you services when something happens on a trip that you're not anticipating, like a medical emergency, for example. You are probably travel insurance, some people always buy, some people never buy. So you have to kind of decide what you think is important and what you can afford. It can give you a sense of security, particularly, I have a cousin who's a travel agent, and she had a ton of people buying travel insurance who normally never would during COVID, because they wanted to make sure, like, if something happened and everything shut down again, that they'd be able to get that money. So just something to keep in mind regarding that. It does add an upfront cost to travel. So you're going to have to build it into those spending trackers that we were talking about. The biggest piece of advice, as with any insurance policy, is to read the fine print. Make sure you understand what is covered and what is not covered. Okay. So specifically, go ahead, Kamaya. Sorry. So there are different types of travel insurance. Okay. There can be, you have to think about, for your situation, what is best for you. If you make the decision to buy travel insurance, what you need to make sure your personal situation, what is covered. So, trip cancellation, any reason? Are there only certain reasons? Again, that fine print. What does that travel insurance cover if you have to cancel, particularly at the last minute? Travel medical insurance, that is things like paying for ambulances or doctor visits, anything, any sort of medical treatment during a trip. Emergency medical evacuation, that is in case you have something happen, medical transportation to the nearest treatment center. Then trip delay. This is something that could perhaps, depending on the plan, give you some compensation for meals, hotels, etc., if you're delayed on a trip. So, for example, you're traveling, overseas, and your flight is canceled and you can't get on another flight for 2 more days. It's 2 days of expenses. So there are some travel insurance that will cover some of those expenses for you. And then baggage, that reimburses you for the depreciated value of lost, stolen, or damaged baggage. Again, everything has to be read very carefully. All right, so how do you buy travel insurance? There are a lot of different ways. Your credit card, actually, if you're booking on a credit card, they may offer trip cancellation, lost luggage, and or rental car insurance if you use that particular credit card to book the trip or the car. So make sure you're really looking, besides just the travel insurance policies, but also your credit cards. Look at the benefits very carefully. You could also usually buy the insurance when you are booking your flight or your lodging or car rental. So it could either be through the travel agents or travel reservation site. It's very convenient to do it that way, but you don't get to customize your coverage that way. So you could also buy directly from travel insurance companies from their websites. So then you could kind of compare pricing and what the coverage actually is and pick a policy that meets your needs. However, that's also a little bit more time consuming. So you have to kind of pick which works for you. So this is a slide we just kind of wanted to put in here to illustrate how costly it can be to travel, and the age kind of also is the cost per age can vary greatly. Okay, so if you have to all of a sudden cancel your trip or something happens, insurance can protect you against some of this loss. It's not going to protect you against everything, but it can help you, mitigate that loss. So this is something that a lot of people may not know, but it has been suggested you can get an annual plan for travel insurance, just like you would for your car insurance, right? An annual plan. That may be something that if it's been suggested, if you take 2 major trips per year, then maybe an annual plan is a good option for you. You're going to want to, again, read that fine print, look very carefully at the limitations and what triggers your actual coverage. And again, related to that COVID-19, understand your policy and pandemic related changes. So some people would buy certain travel insurance during this time and thought that if it was canceled last minute because of COVID, that it was covered. And some travel fine print insurance was like not covering COVID. So just make sure that you are really reading the fine print of everything. All right, so time for a poll. See, Kamaya, you're not the only one that gets a poll. All right, so does your health insurance cover you while you're traveling in a different US state? Lots of answers. Great, I'll give you guys a few more seconds. All right, we'll go ahead and share that. So 54% yes, and then a lot of people also not sure, which I understand. A follow-up question: does your health insurance cover you while you're traveling abroad? Is there a separate poll for that? I may have just been.
I like that question, Nikki, but there was no poll for that.
Okay.
Would you like, you can share in the chat. Yes.
Okay, so let's see. Yes, no, no question mark is. All right, lots of different answers. So here's the answer. The answer is it really depends on your health insurance coverage for both of those questions. So you have to kind of look at your policy to see what is covered for medical care outside of network. Sometimes that may be outside of network, may be a different state or a different country. Some it will cover in country versus out of country. It just depends. And then depending on what your health insurance covers, you may want to seek supplemental travel insurance that offers a wider array of services, including emergency services that would require you to be maybe evacuated by helicopter or plane if necessary. So another tip is that if you are traveling abroad or even to another state, you may want to just keep a list, whether that's a note in your phone or a physical list in your wallet of preferred providers that your health insurance will cover in where you're visiting. So that way, you know, if you get a choice and something comes up, you know, it's quick where you can go. You're also going to want to kind of assess before seeking any sort of medical insurance supplements. Things like your current health status, any pre-existing conditions you may have, that you may want different coverage depending on that. Also, your travel destinations and length of stay. And if you are a high risk activity person, you may want something that covers you differently than if you were going to an all-inclusive resort to sit in the pool like me. So, you know, but if you're hiking Mount Everest, you may want something different. So just make sure you're kind of comparing based on your individual needs. And as always, we say this a lot when we do different webinars, but investigate before you actually purchase a policy. Don't just take somebody's word for it. Read that fine print again. Make sure you understand exactly what it covers and what deductibles and co-pays will apply. And then also, if this is a supplemental health insurance travel, ask what happens if your trip is canceled. And then in the chat, there are some more, we put a link about some health insurance tips while you're traveling. One last thing to consider for those that are on Medicare. Medicare typically doesn't cover healthcare when you're traveling outside the United States. And they also, Medicare usually does not allow you to purchase, the drug plans don't cover prescriptions you buy outside the United States. So as with everything, exceptions do exist. So make sure you're reading. And you can also get Medicare supplemental insurance that may cover you when you do travel outside the United States. So if Medicare currently applies to you or will soon for a trip that you are planning, make sure you're looking at your coverage and if you need that gap coverage or not. All right, I'm going to turn it back over to Kamaya to talk about staying safe when you travel.
Thank you, Nikki. So we provided a lot of great information for you. And so we're going to move into talk just a little bit for a few minutes about how you can stay safe. Now, it starts with like your, you know, even thinking about your trip, like that planning process, just making sure that you are getting the information that you need organized. So this includes, of course, if you're traveling overseas, your passports, making sure that it is up to date. If you go to the airport, and now even online, if you go online and you enter in your expiration date for your passport, they will flag it if it is not valid for at least 16 months, 6 months after your return date. So just making sure that you are updated and keeping like all your information up to date. Additional travel things, making sure that if you're traveling somewhere that does require a visa, that you are finding out information on that. There's also a STEP program that you might be able to enroll in. It's called the Smart Traveler Enrollment Plan. It is like a free service that allows US citizens and US nationals who are either traveling abroad or living abroad to enroll their trip in like the nearest embassy or consulate. So this provides them with that information as to your travel. And some of the benefits for that is just you get alerts from them, about travel advisory, if there's like any unrest going on in the area that you are traveling. And of course, your family and friends can reach out to the embassy in case of emergency situation. Also making sure that you are taking care of like those medical piece. Nikki did a great job with going through some things relating to travel insurance and also talking about like Medicaid. As you travel with your medication, make a note of like generic names that you might be able to find overseas, or whether that's in like a different part of the country, so that you can get the right information that you have to purchase the medication that you need to keep healthy. Here's another thing that we'd want to highlight. So the Center for Disease Control and Prevention does have like their Travelers Health website, which provides a lot of great information for you on that webpage. It has information about current health issues that could impact your travel, information relating to like vaccine and medication, ways of how you can plan your trip and also stay safe and stay healthy. So different information that might help you as you're ready and getting ready for your next vacation. Some additional things to think about from the CDC as well too, as they relate to COVID-19, just making sure that you are checking for updated information before you plan and before you leave for your trip. Many countries and states and even some cities still do have like different quarantine rules for travelers. Just making sure that you are planning with that in mind in case in case something happens and you might need to stay some extra days. Think about how that might impact what you have budgeted, and if you need to be in contact with other people about extending your stay because of just different issues related to COVID-19. So again, the CDC does have information that can help with providing some guidance there. There are other things that we ask, and we try to stay alert on as we travel. Spiking, this is one that has got like an uptick in like in the last recent months. So spiking, of course, is when someone may drug your drink or use a needle without your consent. So the needle spiking is one that has been new for me. I've recently learned about this, where people are experiencing this, and we have seen an increase in some of the European countries, and we included this here just for a little bit more information on this, but not necessarily to say it is a massive issue that is happening right now, but it's part of our process as we're provided information to you on how you can stay safe as you travel. But just knowing that the motivation for this a lot of time is for robbery or just instilling fear, but it is one thing that a lot of authorities are noticing that's happening with travelers, and people are reporting on this. So when things like this happen, this can of course affect your health, and it can affect whether or not you need to be taken to the hospital and the costs of that. So lots of different things around some of these challenges that a lot of visitors might face. The other thing, as you're staying safe on your trip, is to, of course, beware of fraud. Pay attention to your surrounding. Talk with others about like some of the experiences that they may have had, whether that is domestically or internationally. Be careful about how you share your personal information. I know some of us, we're very social and we want to tell people about where we're going and what we're doing on our trip, and we might share some information that people might exploit. So being careful about what you share with others. If you are out and about and you're being pressured to buy things quickly, even if you have the money to buy it, make sure you take a step back and you question why they're asking you to do that. And it's always good to just think and just walk away. You can always walk away. We have some resources that we want to share with you. Our Plan Well, Retire Well blog. Kathy did a fantastic article, on traveling safe, even with like the pandemic, and how you can save money on travel. So a lot of resources that we have there for you. We also have like podcasts from the Making Sense of Money and Family Financial Feuds that do focus on travel. So it's a different conversation between a couple of people, talk about like some of their favorite things about travel, and ways that different tips that you might find useful, some additional tips to what we share here today. Some additional considerations as we're thinking of, why we wanted to do this webinar and the information that we wanted to provide to you. So when we're thinking about traveling more and trying to spend less and save money as we're traveling, thinking about what is convenient versus comfort. So for you, you know what your desires are when you travel, and that should be an important part of your planning process. Making sure that you are, remaining flexible to certain opportunities that you might have. This might be, your travel dates, making sure that you have a time span that you can look to see when you might be able to get like the better or cheaper flight. I know Nikki says that you can't wait it out. It's still very high, but making sure that you have some flexibility in terms of like when you're planning your trip and the dates that you have. Also making sure you are comparing your options that you have, which is why we went over some of those examples in the beginning. If you're traveling with others, ways that you can travel with them to cut the cost of your travel, and thinking about your overall experience. What's going to be happy experiences for you? What is going to bring you joy? And your planning should be a part of that. You should include that in your planning. Now, just to quick summarize some of what we have on here, we provided a lot of great information for you, but of course, we wanted you to make a plan, estimate and compare costs, look to see how you're going to be funding your vacation. That might be a combination of option. You might just want to have that money saved, and you said, yes, this is dedicated to that, but you might also need to explore other options. Track what your travel goals are. You can also track your expenses while you're traveling, whether that's hanging onto your receipt or your electronic copies that you might have. And of course, finding ways to protect yourself while you travel. So whether that it is through travel insurance, watching out for fraud, and then of course, traveling safely, being aware of your surrounding and staying organized. And always making sure that you have others that you trust who know about some of your plans and where you're going to be going in case of emergencies. So with that, I thank you for your time today. Our next Get Savvy webinar is going to be on memes and money. So we're going to have another fun one. Nikki and Andrew are going to be doing that with you in January. We also have recorded Get Savvy sessions that you will have access to that was just shared in the chat. So if you have past topics that you want to go back and watch or presentations on, please find that information on the link provided in the chat. Please stay in touch with us. We'll stay on for a few minutes. We know sometimes we do go over. We have 2 minutes to spare. Yay to us, Nikki. So if anyone has any questions or would just like to talk with us a little bit before you get off, please let us know. We always try to provide a lot of great information for you. So have fun on your next adventure. And if you need resources as you're planning that, let us know.
We do have one question in the chat that I thought I'd throw up to you too, and that is, will a travel agent be able to do a lot of the things that you discussed for you, for somebody?
Nikki, you want to take that one?
Sure. So I actually have some experience with this just because of my cousin being a travel agent. So they're going to be able to do some of this for you depending on what you want them to. However, they're going to also only have access to what they are actually trained to sell. So what I mean by that is, for example, my cousin for a long time was just trained. She could do Disney World, she could do Universal, and that was it. And so now she's expanded to be able to do sandals resorts, beaches resorts, and a whole bunch of cruise lines, right? So they're kind of limited into what they are actually allowed to sell. As far as when it comes to like comparing if you should fly versus a car, I don't know of a ton of people who are going to sit down and do all of that type of detailed research for you. They may be able to give you an idea. We used a travel agent when we went to Hawaii for our honeymoon, and she was like, you are going to definitely have to rent a car in Hawaii. There's no public transportation, right? Like something like that. But are they going to compare which car is cheapest for you? No. So it kind of depends on what you're looking for, I think.
I believe that's the only question that we haven't answered.
Great. Well, I see lots of great comments in the chat. Thank you. It's always a pleasure to be on with everyone. Thank you for being with us today.
Yes, thank you guys.